I don't want to record yet. Hey guys.
Hello.
Video. There we go. How's everyone doing?
Good, good, good.
Paulette, did you have a nice birthday last weekend?
I did.
February 1st.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yay!
Is that you, Juliet, with the big compass in the background? I think we're all here. Erica, are you able to hear us?
I can hear you now. Before I could not.
Okay. Is everybody able to hear and see and all that?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I watched, before we get going, I watched the sample Zoom video yesterday just to get an idea of what it is we need to talk about. And it looked like for the most part, they spent the bulk of their time just talking about, they went to each person in the Zoom video and talked about the rubric basically and what they're seeing so far and gave constructive feedback. I tried to project an agenda for all of us. That's pretty simple, but I think because we have only about 30 minutes that we essentially will probably do it. They did in the sample video where we just go around from person to person and share feedback. That might be hard to do if there's someone's work we haven't had a chance to review yet, but I think that'll be fine. Are you guys good with that?
It's me.
Yes.
Okay. So the way that I wrote the agenda is I just had four items on there, and I only created an agenda because it was in the helpful tips. But the last time that we met almost 2 weeks ago, we just talked about policies and norms for our Zoom meetings. And when I looked back over it, it basically looked like if anyone's struggling or if anyone can't make a meeting or if we need to help out with anything, that we would just reach out to each other via text and just let each other know, hey, missed you, you know, like just communicating and being professional, being friends, and kind of talking about helping each other get on and get going with everything. It was pretty consistent. So I just wanted to us to recap that. And so the only other 3 agenda items, I kind of have it where we each go around and we reflect a little bit ourselves and just say where we're feeling in the process in terms of areas of strength, areas for growth, and just like each of us go around a little bit and mention something, and then we can kind of go from there and start getting into the nitty-gritty of tasks 1 and 2, and then finish up talking about next steps. Does that sound like a plan?
Sure.
Okay. Does anybody want to kind of start just feeling like sharing a strength that you're feeling in the process or some aspect of all of this, and then a growth opportunity that you can already see for yourself?
Um, can you all hear me?
We can hear
Yes.
you.
Oh, okay. All right. Hello. Well, I feel like I started out. I'm still here, so that's a strength. I had many times I thought I was gonna this will be it, but anyway. But the strength is well, I'm a school social worker, so this is a whole different field for me. And so the strength I think I'm learning a lot more about the school
Yeah, I
and
bet.
what really goes into a PLC. Because I've been invited to PLCs, the last 6 years, but like to actually form one is very different.
So that sounds like a strength and a growth opportunity for you.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I'm curious because we all went around last time and we talked about what got us into all this. What got you into all this as a school social worker?
6 years of 6 different schools, 7 years. This is 7 years, and 6 different principals, a new principal every day, and I work with a lot of them. So I just thought, honestly, I feel as if I could contribute a little bit more versus being a school social worker.
Yeah, we just got our MTSS system up and running, and our social worker is a really, really big, important part of that.
Right. Oh, okay. Well, that's good. Yeah, I
Yeah.
to do a lot of that, unfortunately, because I'm all over the place. But so I just want to have one school.
Do you bounce between different schools right now? Do you have multiple schools right now?
Right now, I have 2 elementary, 2 middle, and 1 high school. Oh, 3 elementary. What am I saying? Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I
So
imagine that's like not only starting a PLC, but having to find time to work with that one PLC being everywhere.
yeah. So that's my other struggle.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
Well,
tornado.
Paulette, what about you? What you got? A strength and a growth opportunity.
A strength I have, I think, is communication. Even with my PLC, that our team members, we were able to select them, so we were communicating well anyway. But it's allowed me to communicate more with our math department, to get out of my box, my city, because we're all one group. So now I'm branching out to the math department more. So as far as communication, is great. Growth, I think, which I'm terrible at, is time management. With these papers, tasks coming week after week after week, you really have to know how to manage your time. I caught myself in a doozy Sunday, writing and not saving as I wrote, and submitted the wrong draft. So it's just being focused, time management, good to go. That's a growth. Better managing my time.
I hear you. Erica or Andrea, either one of
Erica,
you want to
you're
jump in there?
laughing. Does it sound familiar?
Yeah,
So familiar. Y'all have
very
no
much.
idea. Well, I'll go next if that's okay.
Yeah.
Like Paulette said, for me as well, it's just being able to work. I'm actually working within my department with my PLC, but I'm
Okay.
working with people that teach other disciplines. So
Okay.
for me, I'm the only one in my department that teaches facts. So for me to be able to branch out and work with a marketing teacher, a teacher that's focused on principles of business, and that's pretty much like the area of where our work keys assessments come from. Our Black students who score typically lower on applied math skills. I'm learning so much about Khan Academy and these online tools that I've never heard of, and I'm asking my students questions about stuff like, I didn't know y'all had that, etc. So it's just been so like a wow factor for me. But again, like just orchestrating my time around these assignments. I feel like I have 4 big things to do every week, and I'm like, okay, if I get the 2 peer reviews done, I'm good, and then I can do my revisions and then start on the following week. And it's so funny because last week I was having a panic attack because I thought Dr. Stedman hadn't seen my revision, and I was like, oh my God, what's going on? And he kind of looked over it, not intentionally. So I was like, okay, I'm good now, but I was really freaking out. But I'm good now. So anyhow,
I am too.
I think we've all had a moment or two of slight panic.
yeah.
Going out on a limb saying that. Andrea, how about you?
Well, I have worked very closely with my third grade team. We are at our school, we're kind of like the team that everybody envies because we get along so well. But with this PLC, I've had to step outside of that and reach out to some other departments. And we really, when I say we have a tight team, we're like family. Like you mess with one, you've messed with all of us on our team. So I've stepped outside and I've got 2 of our exceptional children's teachers on board with my PLC. I have our instructional coach is on board. And I think something my principal said that's been a growth opportunity for me is I have to stop thinking like a teacher and start thinking like an administrator. And that's going to be a huge switch for me. But I'm starting to try to weigh things from both sides. And like Erica was saying, I'm having to budget my time to get the peer reviews. I'm making sure I get those done Monday. So that's behind me. And I try to get my revisions done and turned in on Tuesday so I can start the following week's assignments, because it's a lot. The first week I considered, I said, okay, if I do not make a good grade, I'm quitting. I'm done. I'm not going. I'm not doing this. This is too much, because I was overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But it worked out. I didn't lose too much sleep. I think
know.
that's it for me. I feel stretched with the mindset that I have to develop of thinking like an administrator and not so much like my classroom and my team. I've got to look outside that box a little bit.
Good idea.
Yep. As far as I think strengths that I'm sensing is I'm a English teacher. I was an English language arts teacher, and all the way from grade 6 through 12th grade AP Lit for many years before transitioning into the role of academic facilitator, which is, an instructional coach. And I've worked, under 3 principals very closely. So I think a lot of the work is intuitive to what I've done for a long time, but it's the time thing and the amount of work. I have 2 people actually that I work closely with who went through this program, but one of them who really, really pushed me to do it, and he didn't have to push too hard, but I mean, it just kind of pushed me over the edge to finally do it, is he's like, oh my gosh, it's so easy, it's, blah, blah, blah. But he did the 5 semester, he was getting his master's degree. And when I described to him what we're doing and the intensity and the pace, he's like, okay, it's different. He goes, that the 5 semester, when you do the full program, when you get your master's degree, is apparently a lot less intense and much slower. Like when I told him today we had to record a meeting, he was like, no, you don't have to do that. I'm like, oh yes, yes, we have to do that. We need photo artifacts. And, so I think in the time since he's done that, my principal actually did Gardner-Webb, they've upped the ante a little bit, and the pace and the amount of work. You're right. It's, while there's you're revising one thing, you're on to the next thing. And then there's your real job that you do all day. And
Yeah.
it's a lot. And I feel like we're all getting into our own rhythm of things a little bit. I sense that, at least we're the week 1 and 2, it was, but it's gonna, I feel like it's going to be like that. And, that's why I sent the text the other day saying, a year from now, keep us all sane. So, but I'm glad that we all communicate so often, and we're, feeling good about reaching out to each other, because that makes a difference.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely made it much
As far
easier.
as the individual feedback, I was thinking we could go a couple of routes. We could either go person to person and provide feedback, or we could look at it like the rubric in terms of we go around and we talk about what we're seeing for content, strengths and growth. Then we could talk about the task rubric and the different rubric components, strengths and growth opportunities as a whole, or we could go person to person and give feedback. Which do you guys prefer?
I guess just covering it in general.
Okay.
Maybe things that we've seen throughout
Okay,
without
that
maybe just
I
going
can.
person to person.
How does
I
everybody
don't
else
know.
feel about that? I'm totally cool with that.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so if we're thinking about the rubric, there's 4 key areas. So there's the content, you know, and I like the quote that's on the rubric is, how does the knowing influence the doing? And then there's the rubric strengths and weaknesses in terms of, you know, kind of the checklist of what are you getting done? What do you still need to do? The leadership piece, and then those final 3, the mechanics, organization, APA, and all that. So if we just go in order, and anyone can start, what are some strengths that we're seeing in one another's work in terms of the content, what we're actually writing about? And anybody can chime in. We don't have to do round robin on this.
Well, I can say, with me screwing up the first rubric team meeting, I had Katie's paper the last 3 weeks. So I've really grown just by reading your papers. It seems like you have a lot of experience. And I think reading our peers' paper helps strengthen our papers. We'll see, you know, what the expectations are like. Sometimes I think I don't say enough, and then other times I think what I'm reading is like, wow, that's a lot of information. So to me, I like to balance out the 2 versus just going by the template and the example that they gave us in Blackboard. I think it makes it more real when we read each other's papers.
I feel like every week, every paper I've written and every paper I've read, I've learned more, and we've all grown more as a result of that. I really do.
I agree.
And I honestly, that to me, that very first paper, that very first task was the very hardest, because I felt so consumed by the formatting and I think I spent more time on the formatting and all of that than I did the actual content. It was a lot.
The switch and the addition of APA threw me
Yes.
for a loop.
It's still throwing me.
I got my first master's online through Liberty University, and writing just was something that I could write my way through anything. But then I was accustomed to the 6th edition, and then they're talking about the 7th edition, and I was kind of thinking, oh, I've got to because for me it hinders me a little bit worrying about all that formatting, when to me the content is so much more important.
You are breaking up just a little bit, Andrea.
I've done it. I bought the book. I drank the Kool-Aid. I'm doing it. I'm just glad I'm not a dissertation student who has to redo everything if I don't. I just would say I'm glad I don't have to do a dissertation and rewrite a paper.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like I keep my little APA cheat tab open on my computer at all times.
Okay.
But as far as the content, I think we're all getting like ideas of
Definitely
things to do with our PLC from one another. I mean, that's kind of the point of all this, is to get ideas from one another. I think just because I actually am renewing my national boards for the 2nd time in my career, and so much of the national board process is share the evidence, but then make sure you talk about how it ties back to how it's influencing others or how it's making a difference. So I think an area of growth across the board for our whole group is whenever we share something awesome that we've done, because we're you know, breaking our backs doing all this stuff and doing a great job, but then really a little bit tooting our own horns and not being afraid to do that and saying, when I did XYZ, this happened as a result of it, because that's the vibe I get, is that is essentially what they're going to be looking to see when they when these state scores do that, is how did this one person influence this action and make it happen. So the few peer reviews I've done, I always throw in, love that, you know, like love that you're using more I statements and I led and I facilitated. And that's hard to do because I think we all want to be humble,
Yeah.
collected people, but in order for them to see how you are the one impacting the change, that's when you share something awesome you've done, don't be afraid to talk about how you impacted or influenced that decision. Any other comments about the content itself? Okay, let's talk about some of the rubric strengths that we're seeing in tasks 1 and 2. I'll jump in. I think we're all doing a really beautiful job of a really logical progression within our narratives. We are hitting every subheading, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm kind of married to that sample template. I've stuck by that pretty closely.
And the helpful hints.
Yeah. So anybody want to speak to the strengths of the rubrics that we're seeing across the board?
I just want to say that I agree with you as well, Katie. I think that we're all, from the peer reviews that I've done, it seems like we're all following that accordingly and just kind of, knocking that part out with no problem.
Yeah. I think the challenge will come when the other person who went through the program, she just finished last summer. She works for the district now. She was telling me that when they kind of took the training wheels off and had them start doing completely the narratives on their own with no template, no samples, no subheadings, nothing, is when she kind of was like, it became a little bit more challenging, but having that sample template to start helped out a lot. How about the research and the resources? Because that's been a big part of every task. Anybody want to comment on that?
Yeah. For task 3, just so I understand this. So this is what I understood. Is it 3 lit reviews and then 3 annotated bibliographies, right?
So you have the one subheading of lit review, and then all of the things that you looked up. The way I followed the template. So under lit review, anything that was non-digital, I put my sources under the I'm sorry, I was thinking annotated bibliography. The lit review is, and I saw that the 2 that I reviewed, including yours, Juliet, was research that helped to explain our area of greatest need. And then the annotated bibliography were all of the non-digital sources that we researched, and then the digital I put separately, but they were still resources. And it seemed like the 2 that I reviewed, that was the vibe I got.
And there was 5 non-digital and 3 digital, correct?
I think I overheard Dr. Revis saying that in one of the Zoom sessions, that there was a 5 minimum for the non-digital, and then at least a 3 minimum for the digital.
Because that stuck in my head for some reason as well, because that's what I kept. Yeah.
I think I was missing one. So I'm looking at it now and it says 5 regular resources and 3 online. So that's
Are you seeing that in the rubric, Erica? Because I'm just remembering it from class.
I'm looking at it in the helpful hints handout or document for evidence 1. I just pulled it up because I know that I was missing one of those.
And it was, a lot of this, some of it's been tedious. I found task 3 to be a little bit like that, but I really enjoyed looking up the resources and finding, I'm a big believer in graphic organizers. And I noticed that a lot of the research that the PLC found was the power of graphic organizers. So that was really reaffirming, because we've got a lot of L's in our Math 8 class. I'd say about 80% of the class is non-English speaking. And that's for each teacher. And so to see that, and to see them getting ready to start doing that, that's kind of a cool thing, that they're actually getting ready to, they researched and looked up actions, and now they're going to start doing that. So it's kind of cool to see that.
Thank you.
How about anybody else want to comment on some rubric areas that are growth opportunities across the board based on what we've seen in our peer reviews?
Other than the rubric, I just, like Andrea said, that APA, I haven't written a paper since I was in grad school, and that was in 2010. So I was like, oh my God, what is this? So I think every time we submit a task, I'm probably going to be resubmitting a revision because I'm having some APA issues, and it's like one day at a time with that. I'm reading my paper maybe 5 or 6 times before I submit it for, you know, trying to catch the errors. But I feel like the APA has been the hardest struggle for me.
And
So
That's-
just following that guide is.
It's been time, that part's been, it's been time consuming, and it's been a while since I've had to write research papers myself or even teach research papers. And even then it was in MLA format. And this is very different.
I've been
But
going
I have to believe that by the next evidence, by that AAPSL, and definitely by the next course.
Yeah. We'll be better. I'll try to be better.
And this sounds silly, but I think I decided the other day I'm not going to try to get too crazy with the types of citations I'm doing. You know, it's like I've got a few things I feel like that are working now, and that's going to be how I try to roll.
Yeah.
Good idea. The writing center on the web is pretty good.
What I haven't gone to that yet. What have you seen
Either.
with that, Juliet?
You could basically do this, a Zoom online with them, and one particular guy is really good at formats.
Okay.
You know,
Have
so
they
you-
been pretty specific in sharing answers to your questions?
Yeah. Because I've had little issues with the formatting too. And I have an English degree, and I feel like I don't have an English degree.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I'll get feedback, very, very kind feedback, but also feedback in terms of APA about things that I'm having trouble spotting when
Yeah.
I go to do a revision. And even when I look in the APA 7 book, I'm still not seeing where I'm missing the mark. Has anybody had that?
I have had that as well.
The hardest thing for me was the capitalization rules, because it's contrary to everything that I'm teaching my third
I
graders.
agree.
I'm like, this is not okay. Why are you telling me I can't capitalize this word?
So
But I'm
actually,
doing it.
Andrea,
I'm
I'm
jumping
curious
through-
about that too, because that's the one APA area where I've gotten be cautious of some APA capitalization stuff. What is it that's unique about that I'm missing?
Well, just like if I'm talking about my principal, I will say Dr. Justice the principal, and I would always capital principal as her title, but in my papers, like, it's just very specific things that they don't want us to capitalize, which normally would capitalize. Even in the citations, they've taken away some capitalization that was there. So it's been a learning curve for me.
Yeah, like algebra 1, I had the problem with capitalization too. I want to capitalize algebra 1 and it's not supposed to be capitalized. And it looks so funny.
Yeah.
in
Yeah, because
print that
it's an official course title.
Yeah.
No, ma'am.
Apparently.
That was my one feedback.
Unless it has a name. Unless it's
Okay.
Paulette's Algebra 1, you can capitalize it. You can only capitalize Paulette. It has to be named, which is bizarre to me, but okay. I just said yes, sir, and shook head and kept trucking. Yes, I'll do it.
God gets capitalized, but not principal.
That's
Not
right.
algebra 1.
There you go.
Oh my gosh. I'm getting an alert that they're going to cut our meeting off. So in terms of next steps, let's finish up with a little round robin too, like things that we each want to look to improve upon as we move to the next step, based on our own reflections, based on the feedback we've heard, and whoever wants to start and jump in, go for it.
Learning to explain my data more clearly in my narrative.
I'm glad you said that, Juliet, because that's one of the things that I noticed too, is there's like really good data, like we want to increase XYZ by 10% or 20%. But I was asking a couple times, like, how is that number established? Like, did the PLC say 10% was a good number, or 10% because the school improvement plan said that, or I'm glad you said that, because that was a question I had about a couple that I read.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, my question too.
See, next time you won't have to ask that question.
There you go.
Paulette, how about you? What do you think is a next step for growth for you?
Not, like I said, I guess, again, better managing my time, but also being able to, as Dr. Stedman and Dr. Bates said, we should be looking ahead on our tasks, and I don't do that. And I sometimes feel myself, again, behind. Whereas if I'm looking ahead, I'll know I need to schedule a meeting with my friends. You know, just looking ahead, that's what one of my improvements would be, is to look ahead. See what the next
I
task
agree.
is.
That's a great next step.
Well,
Now,
in his, oh,
Go
sorry,
ahead,
Eric.
Ingrid. No, it's fine. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, historically, I've always looked a week ahead. But with this program, I almost feel like I have to look 2 weeks ahead so I have time to schedule those meetings and make sure that I can get in with my principal to present
Right.
and things like that.
Agreed.
So that's been like, I have to map it out literally on a calendar and put
Yeah.
alerts on my phone just to remind me. So
Mhm.
that's my
Because
growth
there are so
opportunity.
many tasks going on in some
Yes.
shape or form at any given moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll just chime in and say I'm in agreement with everybody. I think for me, like Paulette, I'm trying to manage my time with my assignments, do my internship at work. And it's just like, I told my daughter, I don't have a life anymore. So I think that whole idea, just managing time, I would love to be able to work a task ahead, but I just can't. I haven't been able to do that yet, but I would love to be able to do that in the future.
Yeah, I hear you.
And not to sound like a broken record, but that's exactly what my next step is just trying to make sure that, I mean, I don't want to, always tell my kids I'm doing schoolwork. So just getting to a point where I'm feeling good about not only what I'm doing for these projects and these tasks, but, having a little bit of a moment to breathe and
Yeah.
regroup